and welcome to the Open Book channel. My name is Oleander, your designated open book, and in this video I want to talk about the book Yellowface, give a little review, but also use it as a talking point for how readers' personal preference could, in my opinion, flatten the literary landscape if we let them dictate what succeeds in the book space, as people are wont not to like uncomfortable or truly gray narratives. Yellowface is a contemporary fiction novel, technically a thriller if you find publishing and social media drama to be a tense topic. I do. And it was meant to be satirical or is referred to as such, although honestly, with the author behaviors going on lately, it reads less like an exaggeration and more accurate to the mentalities at the helm of big publishing regarding famous authors' controversies. As long as they're hot and making money, accountability tends to come second. Yellowface is about a writer named June who wasn't living up to her own career expectations, while her frenemy, Athena, was thriving. Given the opportunity, June takes advantage of Athena's sudden death and publishes Athena's unsubmitted manuscript as her own. The book is a hit, and June skyrockets to popularity. Yellowface starts slow with introducing moral dilemmas. Before anyone catches on to the potential that the original manuscript wasn't hers, June is criticized for being a white writer telling the story of laborers during World War I, something that wouldn't have been a problem for Athena given her personal connections. So we're given the question of who can write what story. Kwong masterfully wields June's perspective to bend readers. As June justifies herself and poses counter-arguments, some will come to agree with her that the loudest voices against her are acting in bad faith, and although they're not invalid in what they're posing, their intentions, in a way, diminish how right they can be. Is it inherently racist, regardless of its accuracy or respectful representation, to write about a lived, culturally specific experience that anyone personally did not live? It was super awkward when June got invited to speak at an Asian community group where real affected members would be in attendance, and for the inviter to realize and not really want her there only after picking her up to go, because she was not, in fact, Asian. It's a perfect situation of critique. Was it the inviter's fault to assume June's race and to have not done their due diligence before planning the event? Or is it on June for having published the story in the first place? Was the inviter's assumption wrong to make, or was June wrong to accept? Eventually, the correlation is made. Athena's influence in the manuscript is evident, though people can't prove how much. It's surprisingly easy for June to sidestep the accusations of plagiarism. Without solid evidence, her publishing agent and company don't really care. So long as there's plausible deniability, and she's profitable, June is safe. June initially struggles with imposter syndrome, because obviously, but she comes to rationalize stealing Athena's manuscript as a matter of percentage. June argues that she worked on it so much the final product wasn't recognizable from Athena's first draft, that it was June's editing that made it such a success. I find this particular line of questioning authorial rights even more relevant now with Gen AI. I originally read Yellowface before all this hullabaloo, but anyway. Up until this point in the narrative, even if you don't sympathize with June outright, you can at least understand where she's come from as a desperate wannabe. I found that a lot of her interactions gave me the ick, from disregarding the concerns of those of the heritage of the novel, to lying and rationalizing that someone deserved to profit off the manuscript, and Athena, after all, is dead. But there was a constant balancing act for me internally in lending her credit for how reasonable her excuses were. The moment that tipped from potential acceptability was when June had writer's block. Following her success and she'd gotten away with everything, she found herself stuck, imposter syndrome setting in, and what does she do? She finds an old start to a story that Athena wrote. The inspiration starts flowing, June writes another banger, and her publishers love it. But someone who was once in a writing shop with Athena had read the passages that June started with before and exposes her. Although this piece of fiction is inarguably more June, and Athena's contribution could be considered more of a writing prompt than a total theft, like the last one was, the coincidence and controversy is now too much. And we're all, hopefully, collectively sitting there, now completely unsympathetic to June, who couldn't help poking the bear. June gets dogpiled on social media, dropped by her agents, and someone posing as Athena starts harassing her, driving her a bit insane. The real thriller aspect comes in with Athena's ghost, readers not knowing whether any of it's real or a psychotic break spurred by guilt. As it turns out, June isn't actually being haunted, and the ploy to expose her was devised by someone in her first release's publishing team who'd given June too much pushback. June had ruined her career trajectory, and since she didn't even deserve her success, piggybacking on Athena, vigilante justice needed to be had. The conflict ends in an altercation that leaves June in a new prime position to twist the narrative surrounding her career to redeem herself. Again, although June isn't in the right, there's still the question of how far any one of us wannabes would go for that taste of literary fame. Hopefully not that far. No. The book ends on June's renewed desire to reclaim her status by publishing her narrative, manipulating everything in her favor. Regardless of where you stand on each of the moral questions about publishing, exploitation, and creative rights throughout the book, it's clear that June is addicted to the fame, and despite her viscerally negative internal reactions, she can't help but stick her foot right back in the drama. I loved the book Yellowface. I liked the dark satirical lens it held up to the publishing industry. I was compelled by the characterization, the fluency of Kwang's writing and presenting June, and how nothing was ever completely black and white, but there's always the inkling that if you're siding too easily or often with June, you're not that great a person either. Making me engage with forming an opinion and picking a side on all those matters was so good. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about in relation to Yellowface is that I've run across some other reviews criticizing the aspects of the novel that I think made it work. And we're all entitled to our opinions. These ones just kind of miss the point, in my opinion, so I wanted to talk about how and why. The first one I ran across was in this review of Yellowface. She's a lovely reviewer. I've found recs through her and respect her takes, but in the conclusion of her review, she mentioned wanting a different kind of ending, that she'd have liked to see June learn from her mistakes. And of course, that's a matter of personal preference, to like stories where there's positive growth by the end. This is a dislike that I'm sure a lot of people had with Yellowface because it leaves you uncomfortable. And I'd argue that to have a happier ending would contradict the narrative that was written. There was plenty of growth, it was just in the negative. June, throughout the novel, becomes a worse person, enabled by the publishing industry's willingness to turn a blind eye to bad behavior as long as they can, and exploit people until the point they are not profitable. That ends up being what June learns through experience, and that's how she develops. Sure, a reasonable person would wash their hands of the whole thing, but June isn't. Every time she was given a chance to double down and maintain her status, she did, and it got worse and worse as she went. It says so much that upon the climax, upon almost dying, June sees that just as another point of leverage. June can't have learned to walk away at the end, because that's not the lesson that she was taught throughout the book. What the events of the novel showed her is how much success she can garner if she can manage to get away with it, and that's a high that she's willing to chase. If June was the kind of person to let things go and accept her lot as being excluded from the literary hype bubble, she would have never stolen Athena's manuscript in the first place. So although some readers may not like the bleak ending, I think having a happier one would have undercut the journey and progressive worsening that June goes through. To finally say that was the moment too far, when the entire novel has been June moving that goalpost further away and justifying it, it would have been out of character for her. The point is that nothing will ever be too much, and the cycle will continue in perpetuity. I'd advocate for the ending it has, and though I understand people rating books subjectively, I personally feel a bit weird to want a different conclusion from a book that so thoroughly follows through on its thesis. I tend to rate a bit more based on expectation of the genre and execution, not my preference for the genre among others, and then it gets higher marks over the objective technicalities for my subjective enjoyment. If June learned from her mistakes, that would be a redemption she didn't earn based on all of her other terrible choices, or a lack of punishment for everything that she'd done. If she walked away, she wins outright despite her tarnished reputation. And this leads to similar thoughts I had on the top review on Goodreads for Yellowface. This review is very long. It's not a rant, it's a nuanced but lukewarm opinion of the book, and I feel bad that they seem to have gotten a lot of interaction on Twitter for it and bad faith interpretations of her words, so I hope that I don't also come off that way. But I do want to point out the same sort of sentiments that I think strengthen the book. They write in the review that they see the point that Yellowface was going for and that the book fulfills it, but still thinks that wasn't enough. The commentary was, in the end, too hollow. In that case, I'm not sure what was supposed to happen to make a more fulfilling ending. June suddenly getting punished and held accountable wouldn't be accurate to the satirical commentary that we've seen thus far. June being a better person wouldn't be characteristic. The system is bad and the system persists. That's it, and that's all I think it needs to be. The only other possible ending would be Candace being given the opportunity to benefit from the whole scandal, choosing to as well, paralleling her with June. Even though she never gave a about Athena, she thinks she deserves the space more, and any means of getting there is justified. Perhaps that would also be fine, but it wouldn't be saying anything different. I do believe that they wanted more nuance or guidance in terms of what is morally appropriate through other voices because they mention a lacking in the talking headness of other side characters. But considering that our perspective is through June, I don't think that June would have the forethought to take in that information and then reconvey it to us properly without all of the bias, which in turn obviously led to everything being skewed in her favor. Where some people don't like the open endedness, the lack of resolution, I can't see anything better for a book like this. Maybe it's just because I like and am used to horror, but I'm perfectly satisfied with no resolution being the best resolution in some cases. That this system and these people, despite being caricatures, exist in the real world. Maybe I took the whole thing a little too literally and seriously, but I ended it genuinely disquieted and moved. I felt a bit physically sick, and I don't think the book was trying that hard for an emotional response, but I'm a sucker, I guess. Although it is labeled satire, I think what book tag this novel fits is closer to dystopia because we're in one. I mean, look around, it's 2025. We are so cooked politically, but specifically, the publishing industry is a joke. Although June co opting and profiting off Athena's hard work feels more pointed, insidious in nature, racially exploitative, and jealousy for one's successful peer driven, the questions of validity in what June can claim ownership and pride in, and what big publishers will allow, is more relevant than ever now with Gen AI. Authors using it to write, leaving prompts in their manuscripts, asking it to change the tone of their words. Who are they, if not another side of the same coin that is June? If you read Yellowface, I would love to hear your opinions on it. Clearly, I'm a bit biased, but that's okay. If you have any other recommendations similar to Yellowface, I would also love those too. I know I need to read The Poppy Wars by R.F. Kuang as well. I don't think I'm ready. I can't handle it just yet. If you'd like to support me, this channel, or any of the other things I do, there will be links to my socials in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.